Chapter 1: The Beginning of It All. In the thick haze of early morning fog, the city of Bellington felt like a different world, half asleep, yet buzzing with secrets. The streets were quieter than usual, the sound of distant traffic the only indication that the world was waking up. But in the heart of this city, a story was beginning to unfold. One that would blur the lines between loyalty and betrayal, friendship and survival. There was something about Bellington, something in the air that made you feel like anything was possible, even if you didn't know exactly what that something was. It was a place where strangers could become family, and where the truth often felt like the biggest lie. For Alex, it was just another day. Or at least, that's how he had convinced himself. At 28, Alex had seen the highs and lows of life, but somehow, every time things seemed to settle, a storm was always lurking just beyond the horizon. He leaned back in his worn-out chair, staring at the ceiling of his small apartment. The walls, plastered with old concert posters and half-torn newspaper clippings, felt like they were closing in on him. He could hear the faint sound of someone playing guitar in the alley below, a melody that matched the rhythm of his thoughts, broken, but strangely comforting. There was a knock on the door. "Alex?" The voice was familiar, gruff, yet friendly. It was Mike. His best friend since high school. The kind of guy who would show up at your door in the middle of the night, no questions asked. The kind of friend who was always ready for a drink or a fight, depending on what the night called for. Alex opened the door, and there he was, looking exactly the same as he had 5 years ago, except for a little more stubble and a few more scars. "Man, it's been a while," Mike said, his voice a mix of warmth and tension. "You still holding it together, or should we hit the bar?" Alex stepped aside, motioning for him to come in. "You know me, I'm always good for a drink. But I'm not sure we're gonna find anything worth celebrating tonight." Mike raised an eyebrow, walking past him and throwing himself onto the couch. "That bad, huh?" Alex sat across from him, rubbing his eyes. "It's not that. It's just, you ever feel like you're waiting for something? Like something's about to change, but you don't know what?" Mike smirked, leaning back and stretching his legs. "You're talking about that feeling, huh? The one where everything's good until it's not. You know, like life's playing a game with you, and you're just waiting for the punchline. We've all been there." Alex didn't reply. Instead, he grabbed a bottle of whiskey from the shelf and poured 2 glasses. He handed one to Mike, who didn't hesitate to take it. "You ever think about the old days?" Alex asked, staring into his glass. Mike's eyes softened for a moment, the smile fading. "The good old days? Sure, sometimes. But you know as well as I do, nostalgia's a dangerous thing. The past doesn't matter when the present's on fire." Alex swallowed the whiskey in one go, the burn soothing his nerves for a moment. "Yeah, but it feels like we're stuck, Mike. Stuck in this city, stuck in our lives. The same shit over and over." Mike looked at him, his expression unreadable. "And what exactly are you gonna do about it? You think a drink's gonna change anything?" "Maybe," Alex muttered. "But what if we could do something different? What if we could get out of here? For real?" Mike raised an eyebrow. "You're talking about leaving, huh?" "I don't know, man. I'm not sure if running away is the answer." Alex leaned forward, eyes intense. "What if it's not running away? What if it's just moving on? From everything. From the people who keep holding us back. From the past that keeps haunting us." Mike laughed, though it wasn't a light-hearted sound. "And what about us, huh? You think we can just leave everything behind? What about the friends we have, the ones who can't move on like we can?" Alex hesitated. "I don't know, Mike. I'm just tired of pretending like everything's fine." The silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken thoughts. Finally, Mike leaned back, his gaze softening. You know, we've been through some shit together. More than most people could handle. But maybe it's time we stop running from ourselves and figure out what's next, together. Alex's heart skipped a beat. It was the kind of conversation that made you realize how fragile everything was. How easy it could all fall apart, just like that. Mike stood up, finishing his drink in one swift motion. All right, man. Let's go hit that bar. But this time, we're not talking about the past. We're talking about what comes next. As they walked out the door, the weight of the night seemed to lift slightly. For a moment, Alex allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things were about to change. But he couldn't shake the feeling that the past was not done with him yet. It never really was. Chapter 2, The Deal That Changed Everything. The bar was as familiar as it was unwelcoming. The walls were covered in faded posters of long-forgotten bands, the wooden floor creaked underfoot, and the stale smell of beer lingered in the air like a permanent fixture. But to Alex, it was home. In a place like this, where the drinks were cheap and the conversations were anything but small talk, you could forget your troubles. For a while, at least. Alex and Mike slid into their usual booth at the back. It was the same spot they'd claimed when they first started coming here years ago. They knew the bartender, Ed, who had a habit of offering more than a few free drinks if you looked like you needed them. Alex ordered 2 beers, leaning back against the booth as the dim lights flickered above them. You ever wonder, Mike, if we're just wasting time? Like, what are we doing here? Is this it? Mike gave him a sideways glance. You've been asking that a lot lately. What's really on your mind? Alex ran his hand through his hair, feeling the weight of the question press against his skull. I don't know. Just tired of it all. You know, working the same shitty jobs, dealing with the same idiots. Every day, just like the last. Mike nodded, but didn't speak. The beer came, and they clinked their bottles together, both lost in their own thoughts. A few minutes passed before the door to the bar creaked open, and in walked a man Alex hadn't seen in years. Jake. The name hit Alex like a wave crashing against the shore, pulling him back into memories he'd long since buried. Jake was trouble. Always had been. But trouble had a way of following Alex around, and somehow, it always found him. Jake spotted them immediately, his eyes locking with Alex's. The way he moved was calculated, like he knew exactly where to go and what to say. Alex's stomach tightened. Well, if it isn't Alex and Mike, Jake said, his voice a low, familiar drawl. I should have known you two would be hiding in here. Mike gave a tight smile. Jake. Haven't seen you around in a while. Alex's eyes narrowed. What do you want, Jake? Jake slid into the booth across from them without waiting for an invitation. Straight to the point. I like that. He leaned in closer, his eyes glinting with a mixture of excitement and something darker, something Alex couldn't quite place. I've got a proposition for you two. A way out. A way to make something real of yourselves. Alex's heart skipped. What are you talking about? Jake smirked, eyes flicking between them. I know you've both been thinking about it. You're tired of this city, tired of living paycheck to paycheck. Well, I've got the means to help. I've got a deal that could set you up for life, if you're willing to play the game. Mike raised an eyebrow. What kind of deal? Jake leaned back, grinning. Let's just say I know some people who've got a lot of money. They need a little muscle. A little help with some, let's call it, unconventional business. And you too? You've got the right skills for it. Alex's pulse quickened. He knew exactly where this was going. Jake had always been connected to the wrong crowd. He had a way of pulling people into his schemes, promising easy money, but leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. I don't know, man, Mike said slowly. Sounds like a bad idea. Alex's thoughts raced. This wasn't the first time Jake had come to him with an offer like this, but something about tonight felt different. Maybe it was the frustration that had been building up, the feeling that they were stuck in a rut. Maybe it was the whiskey coursing through his veins, making everything seem a little less real, a little more tempting. Jake saw the hesitation and pounced. Think about it. A little work, a little risk, and you walk away with a lot more than what you've got now. You don't need to stay here, working for pennies. You can have power. Respect. The kind of life you've always wanted. Alex's hand tightened around the neck of his beer bottle. He was torn. He knew better than to get involved with people like Jake. But the idea of getting out, of finally making something of himself, it was tempting. Too tempting. Mike's eyes flicked to Alex, a silent question hanging in the air. Alex met his gaze, feeling the weight of his best friend's unspoken words. Mike knew the risks, just like Alex did. They'd been through too much together to let some smooth-talking criminal drag them down the wrong path. But there was something in Alex's gut that told him this was different. This could be their shot. We'll think about it, Alex finally said, his voice steady. He wasn't sure if he believed the words coming out of his mouth, but it was the best answer he could give. Jake stood up, a smug grin spreading across his face. Good. Take your time. But don't wait too long. Opportunities like this don't come around every day. As he walked out of the bar, Alex felt the weight of the decision begin to sink in. The air in the room felt heavier, and the hum of conversation around them seemed distant, like it was happening in a world that no longer belonged to him. Mike let out a long breath and reached for his beer. Man, what are we getting ourselves into? I don't know, Alex replied, his voice quieter now. But I can't shake the feeling that this is our only way out. Chapter 3: The Price of Freedom. The next few days passed in a blur. Alex's mind kept returning to Jake's proposition, the words echoing in his thoughts at all hours of the day. Mike had been distant, as if he could sense the internal struggle brewing inside Alex. They hadn't talked much after that night at the bar, and Alex wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a bad one. Every time he looked at his phone, his finger hovered over Jake's number, but he always stopped himself before dialing. The decision felt too big, too final. It was one of those moments when you couldn't turn back once you crossed the line. On the fourth day, Alex couldn't stand it anymore. He needed to know what kind of game Jake was playing. He needed answers. So, he called Mike. You still in town? Alex asked, pacing back and forth in his apartment. Yeah, just got off work. Why? Mike's voice was low, tired. I think we need to meet with Jake again. I need to know exactly what we're getting into. No more half-truths. Alex's words came out faster than he intended, but the urgency in his chest couldn't be ignored. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Finally, Mike spoke, his voice quieter now. You sure about this, man? I don't want us getting tangled up in something we can't get out of. I don't know. But we need to find out, one way or another. Mike let out a heavy sigh. All right. I'll be there in an hour. An hour later, they were sitting in the same dingy bar, the air thick with smoke and the faint hum of a jukebox playing in the corner. Jake hadn't changed a bit, his dark eyes were still sharp, his grin still as crooked as ever. But today, there was something different about him. He seemed impatient, almost restless. I was wondering when you two would come around, Jake said as he slid into the booth across from them. His voice was colder than usual, the familiar warmth gone. So, you decided you wanted to hear the full story, huh? Alex leaned forward, eyes narrowed. Cut the crap, Jake. We want the truth. No more games. Jake chuckled softly, but there was no humor in it. All right. You want the truth? Fine. He paused, as if to measure his words. I'm in deep with some people, some very powerful people. I've done a lot of things to stay alive in this game. Some things I'm not proud of, but I did them. And now, I'm offering you two a way out. A way to move up. Mike shifted uncomfortably, his hand gripping his beer bottle tighter. And what's the catch? You don't do anything without a reason, Jake. The catch is simple, Jake said, his tone cold. You get in, you do the job, you get paid. But if you back out, if you even think about pulling away, well, let's just say things won't end well for you. You'll be on your own. And trust me, you don't want to be on your own in this city. Alex felt a chill run down his spine. He had known this was coming, the threat, the ultimatum, but hearing it out loud made it real. Too real. And what exactly do you want us to do? Alex asked, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his gut. Jake's eyes flicked between them, then lowered to his drink. He took a slow sip before answering. There's a shipment coming in. A big one. We're talking millions in cash. The kind of money most people only dream of. I need you to make sure it gets here without a hitch. That's it. Simple. Just move the product, keep your mouth shut, and you'll be set for life. Mike's brow furrowed. And what happens if something goes wrong? What if the cops show up? Jake's lips curled into a sly smile. That's where you come in. You two are the insurance. You handle the complications. You make sure nothing goes wrong. Alex's pulse quickened. And if something does go wrong? What happens then? Jake leaned back in his chair, eyes glinting in the low light. Then you deal with the consequences. But believe me, if you follow through, you'll never have to work another day in your life. The silence that followed hung heavy in the air. Alex could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him, suffocating him with every passing second. This was it. This was the choice that would define their futures, that would determine whether they lived or died in this city. Mike shifted uncomfortably. You're asking us to gamble with our lives, Jake. And for what? A few $1,000,000? Jake's smirk didn't fade. More than a few million, Mike. You'd be looking at a lifetime of wealth. Enough to get out of this goddamn city and never look back. Alex felt his stomach churn. It was everything they had ever wanted, but at what cost? The room seemed to spin around him. Every part of him screamed to walk away, to say no, but another part, the part that had been stuck in this rut for far too long, whispered to him, what if this is your chance? Finally, Alex looked at Mike. His best friend's face was a mixture of uncertainty and resolve, the same conflict Alex felt raging inside him. I don't know if we can do this, man, Mike said quietly. I don't know if I can do this. Alex's heart raced. He had always known that Mike would never be the one to pull the trigger on something like this. It was always going to fall on him. I'll do it, Alex said, the words slipping out before he had time to think. I'll take the deal. Jake's smile returned, wider this time. Good. You won't regret it. Chapter 4, The First Move. The next few days felt like a slow-motion blur. Alex couldn't shake the feeling of doom that clung to him, like the calm before a storm. His decision to take the deal was gnawing at him, but there was no turning back now. He had said yes, and the wheels were already in motion. Jake didn't waste any time. The morning after their meeting, he contacted Alex with the details. The plan was set. It wasn't complicated, but it required precision. Alex was to meet with a man named Lou, a well-known figure in the city's underworld. Lou would provide them with the initial steps, the logistics. And after that, it was up to Alex and Mike to follow through. Simple, Jake had called it. But nothing was ever that simple. Alex found himself standing outside a rundown warehouse near the edge of town. The place looked like something out of a bad crime movie: steel doors, flickering lights, and a faint smell of gasoline in the air. It was the kind of place you'd only visit if you had no other choice. Mike had been silent for most of the drive here, his eyes glued to the road as they made their way through the less traveled parts of the city. Alex could feel the tension in the air between them, the weight of their unspoken thoughts pressing on both of them. "So this is it," Mike finally said, breaking the silence. "This is where everything starts, huh?" Alex glanced at him, his stomach twisting. "I guess so. You good with this?" Mike's hands tightened around the steering wheel. "I don't know, man. I'm not sure about any of this. But I don't think we have much of a choice now, do we?" The words hung in the air, unspoken but understood. This wasn't just a deal, it was a decision that could ruin them. It was already too late to back out. Alex opened the door of the car and stepped out, the cold air hitting him like a slap in the face. They walked toward the entrance of the warehouse, their footsteps echoing in the empty lot. As they approached the steel door, a figure stepped out from the shadows. It was Lou. He was tall, muscular, with a face that seemed carved from stone. His eyes were dark, calculating, and he didn't say a word as he sized them up. Lou was the kind of guy who made you feel small just by looking at you. "You Alex?" Lou asked, his voice low and gravelly. Alex nodded. "Yeah. And this is Mike." Lou didn't acknowledge Mike, just turned and gestured for them to follow him. He led them into the warehouse, the inside cold and dimly lit. There were crates stacked high, some of them marked with symbols Alex didn't recognize. The air was thick with the smell of oil and metal. Lou stopped in front of a large metal door at the far end of the warehouse. He turned to face them. "This is where it starts," he said. "You follow the plan, you get paid. No questions, no mistakes. If anything goes wrong, you deal with it, understand?" Mike shifted uncomfortably, but Alex nodded. "Understood." Lou opened the door, revealing a small office inside, its walls lined with shelves filled with documents, files, and old equipment. The room was nothing special, but there was a sense of power in the air. Lou motioned for them to sit at the small table in the center of the room. "I'll be blunt," Lou said as he sat down. "This job involves moving some goods for a few clients. Nothing too flashy, just a lot of money. The people you're working with? They don't care about you. They care about results. Get the job done, and you'll be set." Alex felt a shiver run down his spine. "And if something goes wrong?" Lou's gaze hardened. "Then you fix it. And if you can't fix it, well, let's just say the consequences are severe." Mike shifted again, his fingers tapping nervously on the table. "So, what's our role in all this? What exactly are we supposed to do?" Lou didn't answer immediately. He just stared at them for a long moment, sizing them up again. Finally, he spoke. "You'll be handling the logistics. Getting the product from point A to point B. It's not glamorous work, but it's necessary. And if you mess up, well, I'm sure you know the rest." Alex felt his heart race, his mind running through the possibilities. There was so much that could go wrong. But there was so much on the line, too. Lou stood up abruptly, the moment of tension hanging in the air. "You're either in or you're out. But I'm telling you now, backing out isn't an option. Not if you want to make it out of this unscathed." Alex exchanged a look with Mike, who seemed just as uneasy as he felt. But they had already crossed the line, hadn't they? There was no going back. "We're in," Alex said, the words feeling like they were being ripped from his chest. Lou gave a curt nod. "Good. You'll get your instructions later. Don't screw this up. With that, he turned and walked out of the room, leaving them alone in the cold, sterile office. The door clicked shut behind him, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was deafening, the weight of what they had just agreed to settling heavily on their shoulders. So, what now? Mike asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Alex ran a hand through his hair, his thoughts swirling. Now we wait. We follow the plan. And we hope we don't get ourselves killed. Chapter 5: The Price of Betrayal. The waiting was unbearable. For days, Alex and Mike sat in silence, each one locked in their thoughts, replaying the words Lou had said over and over in their minds. They had agreed to the job, but now they had to deliver. Every decision, every step, felt like a dance with disaster. If they made the wrong move, it could all come crashing down. But they couldn't back out now. The deal had already been made. On the 5th day after meeting Lou, they received a call. It was simple, direct, like everything else about this job had been. The shipment was ready, and they were to meet the buyer at an old dock just outside the city. No questions. No room for error. Alex's heart thudded in his chest as he and Mike drove out to the docks. The familiar weight of the situation was suffocating, like a pressure that never let up. They were both aware that their lives were on the line with every second that passed. As they approached the docks, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The air felt thick, heavy with the sense that something was about to go off course. When they arrived, the place was empty, eerily so. No cars. No people. Just a small, rusting warehouse at the end of the pier, surrounded by water. The only sound was the lapping of the waves against the dock. Mike glanced around nervously. This doesn't feel right. Where's the buyer? I don't know, Alex replied, his instincts screaming that something was off. We follow the plan. Stick to the script. They both got out of the car, the sound of their footsteps the only thing breaking the silence. As they approached the warehouse, a single light flickered inside, casting long shadows against the walls. Just then, they heard a voice from the shadows. Alex. Mike. The voice was calm, too calm, and it sent a chill down their spines. They turned to see Jake step out of the darkness, a smug grin on his face. What the hell are you doing here? Alex demanded, his anger rising as he took a step forward. Jake held up a hand, his grin never faltering. Relax, relax. I'm just making sure everything goes smoothly. You two don't think I'd leave you hanging, do you? Mike shot Alex a worried glance. You said we'd be working with the buyer, Jake. Where the hell is he? Jake's smile faded slightly, but he didn't answer right away. He walked closer, his movements deliberate, almost mechanical. The buyer's not coming. This is a different deal. One you two didn't know about. What the hell are you talking about? Alex said, his fists clenched at his sides. Jake chuckled softly. You think you can just get away with moving goods for people like me without consequences? You've been playing my game, boys, but the rules? Those were never yours to make. Alex's stomach dropped. He realized, with sudden clarity, the truth: Jake had set them up. They weren't just pawns in this game, they were expendable. He had used them as a distraction, a cover for his own operation. Before Alex could react, the sound of footsteps echoed behind them. 3 men emerged from the darkness, each carrying a weapon. The buyer was never coming. They were the ones who were being sold out. Alex and Mike were surrounded. You're making a huge mistake, Jake, Alex growled, his voice thick with disbelief and anger. You promised us a way out. I promised you a lot of things, Jake replied coldly. But I never promised it would be easy. The men stepped closer, and Alex could feel the tension in the air. This was it. There was no way out now, no way to undo what they had gotten involved in. Mike stepped forward, his face pale. "We don't have to do this, Jake. We're not your enemies. We just wanted to get out." Jake shook his head, his eyes cold. "Too late for that. You're already in deeper than you think. And now, you're either going to play along, or you'll end up in the bottom of that river." Alex's heart was pounding in his chest. He knew what he had to do. He glanced at Mike, and for a split second, their eyes met, understanding passing between them. They were in this together, and they weren't going down without a fight. The men moved in closer, but in the moment of tension, Alex acted. He grabbed a nearby metal pipe from the ground and swung it with all his strength, knocking the closest man to the ground. Mike followed suit, using his fists to fight off another attacker. Jake's eyes widened in surprise, but his reaction was too slow. Alex and Mike fought back with everything they had, but they were outnumbered, and the odds were stacked against them. They had no choice but to make a run for it. They bolted, pushing past the men and sprinting toward the car. Behind them, Jake shouted in frustration, but they didn't look back. The sound of footsteps echoed in the distance, but they kept running, faster and faster, until they reached the car and sped off into the night. Epilogue, Aftermath. The days that followed were a blur of fear and uncertainty. Alex and Mike stayed out of sight, knowing that Jake would be hunting them down. They had made enemies, not just with Jake, but with a whole network of dangerous people who had no reason to let them walk away unscathed. Alex didn't know where the road would take them now. Their lives were changed, irreversibly so. There was no going back to the way things were before. But one thing was clear: they had survived, for now. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The end.